Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal, where you can see I'm joined by James Benge of CBS for Inside Arsenal Extra Time. Good to see you, mate. The season started. How you doing? All good?
Yeah, I'm good. What a start to the season it was. Lots of fun, lots of drama, lots of unexpected thrills. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it's been a good.
Loads
I
of
think.
football on TV.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been a good opening weekend of the season. I think we've had, like you said, there's been a sort of wide range of emotions and games and different things happening. Controversy, great goals. Arsenal getting 3 points at Old Trafford. So yeah, I think it's been a good start to the season. The Barclays is very much back.
It's so good to have it back, especially when it includes 3 points at Old Trafford. I mean, I don't like these big games this early in the season, and generally the Premier League don't either. But it did really feel like it ratcheted up the stakes, and I have to say, of course, I go into all my work as a neutral, but as a neutral, I was feeling a great sense of tension about 3:30 on Sunday afternoon,
You know
which I'm
what I was
sure.
doing? You know what I was doing to stop that tension?
What were you doing?
I was painting. I was painting what will be my office eventually.
What color? Because we
Very,
actually we should have discussed this because I'm painting my office in a few weeks, and hopefully we don't clash.
Mine is actually a very similar color to this wall behind me, but I do kind of want some wood paneling like you've got there. But yeah, there was something horrible about having to wait till 4:30 on a Sunday to kick off the season, and the fact that it was Old Trafford as well, and those few hours on Sunday, sort of leading up to the game from sort of lunchtime onwards, I was getting more and more nervous about the fact that we were playing at Old Trafford, where I just hate this game so much every single season. So I decided to paint to try and I hate painting. There's not much worse, sort of jobs wise, as in round the house when you're not good at it, and I'm terrible at it than painting. It's just really, really frustrating. So yeah, that was how I got my nervous energy out of the way ahead of the game, because I hate this game. Honestly, I hate the North London derby each season just because I want it to be over. I want to know how we've done. I'd love to just fast forward every North London derby to get rid of that horrible, nauseating feeling that I have and just know the result. United's different. It's just that fear of knowing they're pretty rubbish at the moment, but still knowing that we just don't win there. And so, yeah, it was a horrible feeling waiting to the game. But we did win. We did win. We've won every single game in the Premier League. We've won at Old Trafford. It's been 1-0 since the Premier League started. It's mad, that. What are the odds of that?
It's hard to believe, especially if you sort of think of like you were saying, how bad Manchester United have been,
and how open it's been in the last 5, 6 years, 7 years.
I think if it was a collection of Manchester United's players in another Premier League ground in a different kit, I think Arsenal could very easily go there and whack them 3-0. But I really want to understand how this sort of like stays in a building when all the players change, everyone comes and goes. I suspect if we went and looked at sort of the team that won 1-0 in COVID, there's probably hardly any carryover from that other than Arteta. But Arsenal teams just get really nervous at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I even think it happened with
it's a weird quirk of football, isn't it?
Era.
Say that again.
Even in the Invincibles days, wasn't it? It was the 2-2 draw where Arsenal lost the title, kind of like lost control of the title race in 2003.
That was at Highbury.
Was that at Highbury?
Yeah. The Invincibles, yeah. Also, we drew 0-0 as the rude missed penalty was the Invincibles season. Obviously, in 2002, we won the title there with Viltord's goal.
It's the one exception.
98, we had Overmars' 1-0, obviously. And then the 3 since then. Oh, there was the one that was Adebayor scored in 2006, was it? The winner, again, 1-0. Cesc set him up late on. And then the 3 since then, I've missed them all. All the ones I've been to since then, we've lost or drawn. But the 3 that I've missed, the 3 trips I've missed to Old Trafford, we've won every single one of them. So, yeah, I will take the assist for the weekend. And, yeah, so we're going to talk about that anyway in the show. We'll start off just giving our assessment on what we saw. Yeah, I thought you wrote a really interesting piece on the sort of speed of Arsenal's play and all that sort of stuff. So we'll look at that. Then we're going to talk about the sort of selling players debate, I spoke about it in my show this morning. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. I think we're going to go through the squad and put a sort of number on what we think Arsenal could potentially get for some players between now and the end of the window, total that up and see what money we could potentially bring in or think they could bring in. And then once the window's shut, we can go back and laugh at how horrible at that. We've got some comments and questions as well. We'll look ahead to Leeds. So there's plenty to get stuck into, but we've got to start with the game at Old Trafford. Let's talk about your piece then, because the performance wasn't great. Let's get that out of the way. Arsenal didn't go there and take the game to United, dominate possession, miss chance after chance after chance in it, and just edge a 1-0 win. It was a very different sort of game to that, and it played out completely differently to how I was expecting. I don't know about you in terms of I thought Arsenal would dominate in that midfield area. I looked at Rice, Mendy, Odegaard, and I figured they're gonna seize control of the game in that area. It just didn't happen. It never worked out at all like that. And it became, as Mikel described it, as a basketball match, certainly in that first half. So you wrote a really interesting piece after the game and your sort of analysis on it, on the sort of the speed of the play, how poor Arsenal were in possession. I think it was 75% pass completion, which was way less than anything since the 2-2 draw at the Etihad last season, which obviously had context behind that one. So give me your thoughts on what you saw on Sunday and the sort of struggles Arsenal had to really just sort of take a firm grasp of the game at Old Trafford.
Yeah, it's really interesting. For people that haven't read the piece, which is on cbssports.com, this is the fastest Arsenal have played since, I only checked as far back as their first season of finishing second. There've been a few, and it's the fastest by a long distance. They advance the ball towards goal 2 meters per second, which is about 50% faster than their average over the last 3 seasons. And I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if some of it is just that they scored early on. And is this a different way of approaching 1-0 leads? I'm really interested to get your take on this, first of all. If you have Victor Gyokeres in this team, should you be playing faster, especially when you're looking to attack with a 1-goal lead? We said last season, didn't we, that sometimes Arsenal were a little bit guilty of sitting back, of playing like they're 2 or 3 up when they're 1 up. And is this transitional style? And when I was writing this piece, it was being written before the press conference, and I knew, you just know when you've been around a manager for so long, I knew Arteta was going to describe this as a basketball game. Do you think this is a deliberate adjustment of how Arsenal are going to play, especially when they're winning 1-0? Or was it just a weird game that got stretched and, Arsenal just kind of had these opportunities to transition, and why wouldn't you take them and run through that kind of underwhelming United midfield?
I think it's a sort of combination of everything, to be honest. I don't think I'm not expecting a similar game when Arsenal play Leeds at the weekend, for example. I know it's different. It's Arsenal going to be at home, and you're going to have a team who are going to be sitting a lot deeper in terms of Leeds going to play the game. But I also think I think the fact that Manchester United are just a weird team as well, and they have no midfield, basically, that once you do get through them, you're suddenly at that defence and you're running. I think there is definitely part of Arsenal trying to play the ball quicker and move the ball quicker because of Victor Gyokeres in that side. And so I think all of those things combined to give us the sort of game we saw. I thought it sort of morphed back into more Arsenal-like performance in the second half. To me, I thought the first half was a real sort of like, wow, what the hell am I watching here? This is just this is not Arsenal, not the Arsenal that I've come to know. But yeah, I think I got the impression. I do wonder as well, the whole 8-second goalkeeper rule as well. I wonder if that sort of plays a little bit of a part in it. You can't hold on to it. You can't let everyone to reset a little bit more. And so you maybe Rise moving getting the ball out a little quicker at times. I don't know if that plays into it, but I do think there was a combination of things that sort of resulted in the game that we saw.
Yeah, I do think that Arsenal are going to inch towards more direct football almost in every game state. Because one of the things I've just been looking at today is how City played against Wolves, and they've gone more direct as well. I'm not saying this is the Arteta copying Pep or Pep copying Arteta. I just think coaches are sort of reacting to the physicality of the Premier League and thinking we can't just park ourselves in the opposition final third and defend our 1-goal lead by remember the 300,000 passes Arteta used to talk about as this way of defending. I don't think it will always be like that. I'm sure there will be opponents where that is the way to play, but I think against United, when their wing backs are pushed high, maybe Arsenal just felt we can get them through Martinelli and Ødegaard, and Ødegaard playing the passes and Saka, and it just didn't really click. I definitely think we'd be looking at this game quite differently if Gyokeres hadn't been kind of unfortunate enough to tread on the ball when it looked like he was shaping for that shot, coming in from his favoured position. It's really one that's intrigued me in so many ways. I mean, there's so many little bits you can pick at as well. Was Calafiori a bit too indisciplined in that first half, or is it just like Brian Mbeumo is one of the best right wingers in they're probably the third best right winger in the league, and Arsenal are only going to run into one other of the top three? It's left me with questions, but they're fun questions, and the joy is we get to sort of address these, not anything Arsenal have got wrong, because they did what they do when they're not playing well. They scored a set piece goal.
So when you look at the way we played and you look at the opportunities Arsenal created in the first half, which was plentiful. Liverpool get in those situations that Arsenal got in the first half. They scored 3 or 4 goals in that game. Do you look at it, if this is how Arsenal are going to play more often, do you look at this team and the players in it and think they will get better at taking advantage of those situations? Because they didn't even, not one of those situations led to an actual shot on goal. Not one single one of them resulted in a shot on goal.
And I think
it's mad.
It's incredible. There's a Billy Carpenter, I think he posted a stat that was, sorry, Billy, if I'm miscrediting you, something like Arsenal had more fast breaks than Forest last season, but like a quarter of the number of 4 goals, and Forest had like 4 times as many, something like that. I don't think Arsenal are great at executing. I think
what went wrong on Sunday from those situations when you looked at it? Because lots of people have had their say of, Saka and Martinelli were playing too narrow when they were making the runs. They were kind of angling in towards Gyokeres, and it was really constricting the pitch and stuff. So should they have been going further out wide to give Gyokeres more chance to have space in? It was just, there were so many different scenarios that played out, and not one of them resulted in anyone having a clear sight of goal.
I think it's that, but I think all of these things are solvable on the training ground, given time and patience. Martinelli and Saka are both inverted wingers in the sense that their strongest foot is the one they're cutting onto. So you would sort of expect them to naturally want to make runs that are inwards, and maybe at least one of them needed to make the outward run to stretch that United back 3, back 5 a little bit more. They're hard. I mean, if over 6 games we've seen loads of these chances and they're not resulting in shots and goals, then I think we can say, is there something that's wrong? I think we also forget, though, many of us have played football at a much lower level. It's very hard to get your passes right, to get your runs right when you're moving at full pelt. One of the things that guys like Saka and Ødegaard are so good at is how they play football when it's slow. My thing about this transitional play is Arsenal's best player, Bukayo Saka, is deadly when the game is slowed down. It's why I don't really think it will last. But I think give them time. The quality is so good that I don't see why there's anything unique about that front 4 and the other guys Arsenal have that means they can't execute on the counter. I'd be interested to see how Madueke fares, like kind of going back to what you're saying about if the runs are coming inwards, having a left footer on the left wing who will naturally head out wide. That should make that space for Gyokeres. That probably would have dragged, was it Yoro that was on the right at the back 3? Whoever it was, they would have got dragged out wide. So give it time. I really don't think this will be like you said, I don't think we'll see Arsenal play like this that often, but maybe it's the sort of game state approach at 1-0 up that we might see a little bit more. And as long as they're doing it when they're 1-0 up, they've done something right.
Yeah, well, it's a fantastic result at the end of the day. The performance wasn't great and everything, but it was a fantastic result. And they, like you said, they relied on what they're good at. They scored a set piece, second half defensively, although they were weirdly just poor defensively in the first half, to be honest. There was mistakes happening that you just don't usually see with these players. Like Saliba and Gabriel looked like they never met each other at times. I probably think that they were so stunned what they were looking at ahead of them, thinking, what the hell, what is happening here? We've just got rid of the ball and now suddenly it's coming back straight away. But second half, they were so much better. It was, the 2 of them were imperious. Raya was great when called upon, and it's a fantastic result, absolutely fantastic. But just before we move on to sort of the selling players debate, just on Victor Gyokeres, what did you make of his performance? It was a tough one. I think it was 4 completed passes. The first time in about 5 years he hasn't had a shot in an opening game of of a league season. Obviously, the United fans were getting on his back, all that, because he rejected them in the summer. It was a tough one. Like you said, that was that one situation in the second half that he kind of felt like he'd been waiting for the whole game, where he finally got played in down the channel. He squared the lit up one-on-one. He was getting it on his right foot, and you were thinking, go on. And he trod on the ball, and the chance had gone. It just kind of summed up his day. But was there anything you saw there that made you think, it's fine and all that sort of stuff? What did you? Because there's been some ridiculous criticism already of him and total overreaction on the sort of 160-minute showing. So what did you make of it, and how do you view how Arsenal are going to sort of work with him going forward?
Yeah, I mean, look, like, it is overreaction to say any more than it wasn't, like, to go beyond it wasn't great. It wasn't great. Like, there were flashes. I really liked how he wasn't just attacking the left channel. You were seeing similar things down that right channel. And probably the best thing he did in the game was going down Saka's side, getting to the byline, good cross. In future, Gabriel Martinelli, kick the ball, not the air.
Yeah.
Beyond that, like, it's just there's just not enough to go on, really. Feels to me a bit like, I think, like, just get him a goal and everything should change from there. And I do think, for, in the modern climate, there always has to be this. If you're a manager, you always have to, like, manufacture chances to make sure your new striker scores, because the level of discourse around big name footballers and big name striker signings is such that I don't believe that anyone, even someone as mentally strong as Gyokeres, would be able to sort of cope if that tidal wave of negativity started to build. So I hope it changes soon. It wasn't great, but I'm not worried about that. I'm sure you're the same.
No, not at all. Do you think Arsenal would have played differently if Havertz? Do you think that first half would have panned out any differently if Havertz was the striker and Gyokeres? Would it have been a completely different game? Do you think it was because of Gyokeres'?
Well, they did keep smacking the ball up to Kai Havertz and then going long and sort of not doing their possession game when Havertz came on. So no, I thought Havertz looked good though. And this is always the sort of the challenge with Gyokeres might be that the end result of this is to get the best out of Kai Havertz, and that's great for Arsenal and not great for Victor Gyokeres. I think there's something about Man United and the wing backs and the way they play that made Arteta want to play this long ball football. And maybe there was a hope it would bring the best out of Gyokeres. Instead, I just felt like that because Arsenal weren't having sustained periods of possession, they weren't able to manufacture the situations where they could get him good touches in the penalty box. And that's why he ends up with 9 and no shots and very little.
Yeah, well, I mean, it didn't help that they had, what was it, 75% pass completion. It was honestly, mate. I was throwing things across my dad's living room watching the game. I was getting so frustrated at the constant giving the ball away, and it was a frustrating game. But I don't care. 3 points.
It's a weird one for Zubimendi as well. I thought, just because, like, it felt like the first 10 minutes United were giving him the, like, welcome to the Premier League treatment.
He got the nice elbow in the face after a couple of minutes, didn't he?
Which I don't think is a red card, but it's one of those that you wonder whether it's a sort of accidental on purpose.
It was definitely on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can't prove I'm hitting you.
No,
but
it was
the arms there.
Purpose.
And then it felt a bit like he sort of the game went in such a way that he couldn't really get on it either. So,
but I'm sure he was probably looking at Declan Rice and saying, "Hold on, where the hell are you here?" Because that was the most unlike Declan Rice performance I think I've seen since he joined Arsenal. I don't know what happened. It was
a lot of the performances were like.
I was listening to Andrew and James on the Arscast, and Andrew made a good point that Rice got smacked in the face by the ball straight after he scored from that free kick, didn't he? It was like, I wonder if he was concussed or something, because it was like, where is Declan here? What's going on? Normally he's all over the place. I remember Old Trafford last season, the 1-1 draw when he scored the equaliser, but he was like a one-man show in that game. He was so good. And then it was such an un-Declan-like performance. I do wonder if Zubimendi was sort of looking around going, hold on, where's this £105 million Declan Rice that I've come to play with? But I'm sure it'll be very different. I mean, the two of them played so well together just a week earlier. So, we will talk about the Leeds game a little bit later on, and we'll look at maybe whether there'll be any chances for changes or anything like that and what we'll do. But I thought we'll move on now to the sort of question of selling. Actually, no, before I do that, I lie. I'm going to bring up a question that I wanted to ask, and this sort of sticks with it. So it's Mr. Quende. He says, "Hi, Charles and James. I'm happy with the fact we are trying to evolve the way we play to suit our new players, but how long will it take for this to start working is a concern. It may not have an effect on any of the cup competitions, but we also don't want to fall behind on points early in the season as Liverpool and have been elite in transition for years now." So there is that question that I thought was interesting of how long do you give it before you start thinking this isn't really working, before you try and change things and revert back to time. You know, we know Arteta's quite a safe manager, isn't he? Quite a safe coach. And if he sees something that he doesn't think is working, and it's still too early to say it's not working, obviously, but do you think there'll come a point where if it realistically, you look at it and think Arsenal can't play like this, they don't have the players to do it, it's not working? Do you see a way of Arsenal suddenly reverting back to purely possession type football?
Well, I think like in general, they will be more possession oriented, like this weekend against Leeds.
Yeah, it'll be a different game against Leeds, won't it?
And so many games. And this is probably more a vision for a way that Arsenal can play in the right circumstances. Because that's why I wouldn't worry too much about it, because at the moment we don't know if this is Arteta's new vision for how Arsenal want to play, or if this is, a plan, an option, a fallback option. To me, when Arsenal play as well as they do, and kind of take red cards out of the equation last season and injuries, they were the second best team in the league. Like, plan A is still working. This is plan B or plan C. So it feels premature to worry about whether this approach is going to click.
Yeah.
And it just, in the end, Arsenal are so good that most teams won't let them play transition football against them. Leeds, I'm certain, when they on Saturday, will have their banks of 4 and 5 and challenge Arsenal to break them down. And then you can't transition against that.
Yeah. And in a way, it's good to see them trying something new, because I said this on my show this morning. I remember I was in Portugal at the time, but the online reaction to the defeat against Spurs in pre-season was, same old Arsenal coming up against a low block, playing the same way. You've seen nothing's different. And now we are seeing something a little bit different. It might not be the thing we see week after week, but it is another way of playing, a different way of playing. So, that's what I think we've all been calling for a while. So even though there was clearly teething problems at Old Trafford in sort of adapting that style, it is good that they're looking to do that and have another way of playing rather than just the sort of horseshoe of death style of football that Arsenal have become accustomed to. Right. Let's talk about selling players. Just before coming on and starting this, we had a tweet from Fabrizio Romano saying that the stuff with Porto and Gyokeres is still ongoing. Obviously, Gyokeres wasn't even involved in the squad at Manchester United, which I think was very, very telling in terms of the fact that, but obviously players had to be left out because of the numbers Arsenal have at the squad. But when you've got a player like Gyokeres, who was so key in the second half of last season, not even making it, and the new signing in Mosquera, a very young player, making it ahead of him, I think it tells its own story. The fact that Calafiori has been used ahead of him this season at centre-back as well, I think tells its own story. So clearly things are going on behind the scenes with Gyokeres, and there is a chance that he might well go before the end of the transfer window. And he's not alone in that. There's a lot of players who could potentially go between now and the end of the window. So I thought we'd play a little bit of a game here. We'll look at those players who we think realistically Arsenal could sell between now and the end of the season, or would want to sell between now and the end of the window. And we're going to put a sort of number on what we think. Now, I think we'll put a number on what we think's realistic, and maybe a number on what we think we would want for those players, because I think that might be a little bit different. So we'll start with Gyokeres, shall we? As he's the big talking point at the moment. And probably I would say, do you think he's the most sellable asset Arsenal have at the moment in terms of, unless they did something, someone came in for Martinelli late and, put in a big load of money on him, I would say you're probably going to get the most money for Gyokeres out of anyone in that squad that you're looking to sell?
Yeah, I think so, because when a team come knocking, you can convincingly say, no, we're not going to sell him just because you've made an offer. We don't need to sell him. We're happy to keep him.
Well, that appears what they've done with Porto anyway.
That is the case. I mean, Porto's initial bid was, can we loan him for a year and then give you the money? No, thanks. And it would, I would look at someone like him and say, I would want 35 million And actually, I probably wouldn't be willing to do a deal below 30.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's really good. I think the worry is that if you don't cash in on him when his stocks are high off the back of covering for Gabriel, you might in a year's time be sort of selling someone that's had 8 Premier League appearances. But I wouldn't really be doing the deal for lower than 30. So yeah, 35 want, 30 accept. I'm going to write mine down.
Are you? Can you write mine down at the same time?
I'll write yours down on my phone.
I think you're right on that. I wouldn't veer too far away from that. I think 35 million is what I would certainly like for Kivior. What did Arsenal pay for him? They spent about 18 million to sign him, didn't they? Something like that. And he's obviously matured into a very good defender since then. He showed last season how good he is. He's still got a few years left on his contract. I don't think he's not got huge Premier League wages that make him virtually impossible to sell either. So I would say 35. I mean, what was Porto were about 27 they were looking at, weren't they? Something like that. And I think Arsenal were quite right to reject that. So how much did Kwanzaa go for? And I know that was probably some dodgy PSR deal because of the Vert deal and everything, but Kwanzaa went for about 35, didn't he? And I would want more than, I think Kivior's worth more than Kwanzaa. So maybe I would say I would want 40 and I would accept around 32, something like that. So maybe a little bit beyond 30. So maybe want 40, would accept around between 32, 35 million, something like that for Kivior. Because I think he's sellable. I think he's an international player. He's played really well in the Champions League. He's got a long contract. He's not got huge Premier League wages. And I think there's more than one team that would quite like him. So I don't think that Arsenal are in that situation with him, like some of the other players, where it's like, God, how are we going to sell him? You should be able to get good money for Kivior.
Agreed. He's the one that, because bear in mind, I'm going to have to take that money I get and I need to get another. It doesn't have to be, say, another centre back, but it probably should be another left-footed centre back. Just to keep my numbers high.
Would you sign someone if you sell Kivior? Would you sign a defender?
I'd need 8 defenders.
Oh, I don't.
I've got Mikel Arteta hammering at my office door saying, "I'm not adding you left back in a whole year. Get me a left back."
I don't think you need a new defender if you sell Kivior now. I think if I'm selling Kivior, I'm putting that money to try and get another attacker. I think
I'm going to try and do both. And I would, if I had to make the call, I would sort of say, "Well, I'll take the attacker and try and cope with." But we're talking 7 defenders, then, aren't we? Saliba, Mosquera.
You are talking 7 defenders. I know.
So I'd like,
and one of them is Ricardo Calafiori.
He's done his work for the season.
Yes. So all cross our fingers that he stays fit. But left-sided cover, who have you got? You got Calafiori, obviously. Gabriel's number 1. And then you have Calafiori behind him. You have brought Mosquera's played on the left quite a lot and well, so he's an option on that side.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be surprised if they sign another defender if they sell Kivior. But anyway, we'll see on that. So
Zinchenko, it's assuming that the other guy, it was sort of assuming that Zinchenko goes as well.
Yeah.
What I'd like is, a nice sort of 10, 15 million. I think in the knowledge that he's quite expensive for the final year of his contract, and he doesn't really seem to fit Mikel Arteta's plans anymore. I'd probably say yes to 5 million, but I'd be sort of pushing for 8 million to sell, but my sort of public facing is give me 15 million and we'll talk. So I'll do a deal at 8.
Okay. I would. God, can you? I think I'd rather keep him around if I'm only getting £8 million for Zinchenko. I would want 15 million, and I wouldn't do a deal for much less than that. I don't think. I don't know, because he didn't use him last season, did he? That's the thing. It's like, what point is keeping around if he's not going to use him? So I would want 15 million, and I would maybe do a deal at 12 million, something like that. I wouldn't go too far below 15 million for him, just because I think he's a good player. But the way he's a difficult one to sell, though. He's not like Kivior. That's the thing with Zinchenko, isn't he? He's more difficult than Zinchenko than Kivior just because of the wages that he's on. And a lot of clubs will look at that and think, "Sod it, we'll just wait for a year and then try and get one a free." So he's a harder sell than Kivior, but I still want to be pushing definitely for around the 12 million mark. It'd be nice to get 15.
Yeah, it'll be very nice, but some clubs got to be mad, I think.
Yeah. So the midfielders, then, who we got? Vieira and Sambi are the two in midfield, aren't they? That, there's no one else there who's gonna be going between now and the end of the window. I mean, these fall into Sambi falls into the tougher sell category. Not impossible, but a tougher sell category. I think Fabio's an interesting one because I think Fabio's a really sellable player. I think he's not on huge wages. I think he's still young. He's a good player. He didn't do terribly at Porto last season. And I think there's definitely value there for clubs deciding. Will Arsenal get anything like what they paid for him? Of course not, because it's been clear they overpaid massively for Fabio Vieira. But I still think there's good money there. Now, Jordan at The Sun ran a story yesterday saying Arsenal want about 25 million for Fabio and that Stuttgart are willing to pay around 17 million, which includes add-ons for him. So I'll go first this time. I can see why Arsenal are saying 25 million. I can see why that would be the sort of number they've got in their heads. But I would probably take between 17 and 20 million for Fabio Vieira if someone came in for him.
Yeah, I think even I would inch towards the higher of those and say that it's 20 million for me to do a deal on Vieira.
That feels like a good number for him.
If only because, let's assume some others go, I could see myself finding uses for Fabio Vieira. I'm not talking big Premier League games, but sort of EFL Cup, the odd Champions League game where the physicality isn't so necessary. He then at least gives me a player that I could use in place of Martin Odegaard. I know that there's guys like Ethan to do that as well, but I'm not, and he's not on huge money, so I'm not terrified of keeping him. And I'd be saying 20 million to make this happen. That's where I'd do the sale.
That feels like a good number, I think, for Fabio. 20 million. I think, Arsenal did overpay. There's no doubt about that. But he is a good player. There's talent there. And in a different league, I think he could be a very good player for someone. And I don't think you can just be giving away a player like Fabio Vieira. He's clearly a talented young player who could, really go somewhere and play well. So I think 20 million.
On the subject of giving away, neither of us have given a price for Lokonga.
We'll talk about Sammy. So yeah, I'd be certainly at the start of negotiations. If you're Arsenal, I think 25 million is a good number to start with, but I think sort of 20 million is probably the number that I would be happy with. If it turned out like tomorrow the story comes out, Arsenal agreed 20 million deal with Stuttgart for Fabio Vieira, I'd look at that and think, yeah, that's good. That's a good deal. Anything less than that, I'd start thinking, you've lost out there. Liverpool would have been able to sell. And I mean, what they sold Ben Doak for, 25 million or something.
I know, it's incredible.
Exactly. So I don't think you can be giving away a player like Fabio Vieira, in my view. So Sambi, this is
yeah.
What's he got left on his contract? A year now? Is it a year?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just anything. I think at this point, that's no slight on Sambi, but I just think he's had two pretty injury-riddled loan spells where when he's played pretty well. Like he was popular at Luton when he played there in the Premier League. He was pretty popular at Sevilla when he played there, but injuries unfortunately just stopped him in his tracks on both loan spells. So, I think if you could get 5 million, 8 million for Sambi now, I think you'd be quite happy to do that just to get him off the books, wave him away, and on you go. So, I'd probably say 8 million would be my starting point, but I think I'd be quite happy from me personally if Arsenal just got 5 million for Sambi and just sort of cut their losses with that one.
Yeah, I'm even lower. Like you, it's nothing about the talent of the player. It's just the contractual situation and the injury record and all that. And honestly, if you come my way with £2 million and I'm not subsidising his wages, I think I would do that deal. Because I don't think it doesn't matter. It's not. You don't need to worry about sending messages to the market. The message to the market then would be you've kind of moved on a guy that's hard to move on. So yeah, I'd take a couple of million to facilitate that and make some space in the squad, make some space on the wage bill.
I mean that's such a low amount of money. You'd think that's easy to do. Surely that's easy to do. So I can't imagine Arsenal would be willing to sell him for 2 million, because if they would have done that, they could have sold him for 2 million. Surely they must be thinking to themselves, or on the market, they must be saying, right, 10 million, 12 million for
Is
Sambi.
Lokonga top of anyone's list though? Is he?
No, but you could go back to Anderlecht, or go back, to those clubs have got more than, they can pay 5 million, 6 million for a player. So 2 million feels like you're basically signing a youth player for £2 million.
I think there's a logic to doing it just to get that sorted, to open time, to conduct other deals, and the last thing you want to do is panic and leave yourself on January the 29th, August the 29th, August the 31st, and the avenue you thought was open to Sambi is shut, and there's not time to find another. I mean, I would be saying give me 5 mil, but I think you need to make sure that deal's just one that's done.
Yeah,
more than anything.
Yeah, you don't want him left in the building at the end of the window. That wouldn't be great. So right, moving on to the attack now. I suppose we start with Reece on that one, just because he's the one who's definitely you would think something's going to be happening with between now and the end of the window. We know Fulham have been talking about bringing him back. Nothing's materialised yet, and another loan, and it has been discussed there. I mean, there's a thought that Arsenal are looking for a sort of around 20 million for Reece Nelson.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah. Do you think that's realistic? Do you see someone paying 20 million for Reece Nelson?
I think the challenge is it feels like a sort of one-team market at the moment. There's all those factors of Nelson really enjoyed his year at Fulham. It's a good place to move. They pay good wages, like very good wages for the position they're in.
West Ham have been sort of around.
Yeah, and if you could get one of them to the table, then a West Ham or another team where Nelson would be happy, then maybe you can drive the price up. But right now, it feels like Arsenal don't hold too many of the cards in this. So for me, he's still a very good player, though. But again, injuries. I think I would be doing what they're doing and pushing for 20 right now. But I think if Fulham came along at 15, I would take that deal, because again, we have to say, and this is maybe the criticism you'd level at Arsenal, he's on over 100 grand a week.
Yeah, he's on big money. That new contract gave him a lot of money. I don't think you should be accepting any less than 15 million for Reece Nelson. I really don't. Again, he's English. He's still pretty young. He showed last season when he was fit. He's a good Premier League player. He showed that at Fulham. You've got to be looking. I can see why Arsenal are on the market saying to anyone, look, £20 million. That's the sort of starting price here of negotiations. I can absolutely see why they're pointing to that. And again, you go back to sort of Ben Doak going to Bournemouth. You're looking at how much did what's his name? Brentford just pay for the Bournemouth player?
Hutchinson.
No. Yeah, but actually, Amari's a really good. 35 million or 36 million or something like that. Whereas just paid for Amari Hutchinson from Ipswich, and when Reece was fit last season in the Premier League, he was playing just as well as Amari Hutchinson was doing for Ipswich in the Premier League. So, I know injuries have to be taken into account, everything like that, and high wages have to be taken into account when you're trying to sell these players. But I think 20 million is absolutely. I can see why Arsenal are doing that. But I can also see why other teams are trying to play a bit of a sort of poker game and get this as late on in the window as you possibly can, and then seeing if you can get a little bit less money. So I would say, I'd say Arsenal 25 million they would want. I would say 20 million is what you should be getting for Reece Nelson. I really do think 20 million is a fair price for Nelson.
I'd be really happy with 20 million, but I don't think it's
realistic.
It's also the disappointment there is if you got this right, Reece Nelson could have been, and you knew that Saka was coming through, and you've got Martinelli, but that Reece Nelson is a really good footballer. If Arsenal had managed that right, that could have been a 50, 60 million pound sale. The sort that that gives you the firepower to go out and buy a superstar. We've missed 2, by the way. I noticed you've come off the squad list.
No, because I wanted to bring this question up as we were talking about Reece. So Tommy's got in touch and said, what are your thoughts regarding the possibility of keeping Nelson? Let's say Trossard is sold, and we haven't spoken about Trossard yet. We will. That would leave us very little time to pull a move, especially if we want a reasonable deal. I can see Arsenal keeping Nelson, as he was very sharp in pre-season. He was the original star boy, after all, before Saka came through. In the case both Trossard and Nelson go, I'm afraid we'd find ourselves in the same situation early last season when both ESR and Vieira were off and we were left short in midfield. So while we're talking about selling Nelson, is there a fair argument for potentially keeping Nelson in this part as part of this squad? He was, by the way, sorry, before you answer that, he was in pre-season Arsenal's best left winger in the tour.
I agree. But even if Trossard was sold, I feel like I could kind of white knuckle through to January and getting a player I really wanted with some combination of Madueke, Martinelli, if I needed to on occasion, a Gyokeres or a Jesus or somewhat, or just a sort of different kind of approach. I'd do that if I'm getting a good, like that £20 million deal for Reece as well. If there's a deal to be done for Trossard and there isn't one to be done for Nelson, then you'd hold on to that and reassess in the summer. But I wouldn't not sell Nelson for a good price just so that I can have another left winger when, the cupboard's not exactly bare in that regard, even without Trossard.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the time is right to sell Nelson. I do. I think he could be valuable if he stayed. I think he would get some minutes and he'd be valuable here and there in some games. But I think for Arsenal, I think for Reece as well, it's just time to.
He should have left on a free from his perspective. He should have gone then. It's quite, he could have left with a final moment being the Bournemouth goal. But I think it's hard to say no to the money at your boyhood club. But I think everyone probably would agree that that contract, maybe it wasn't the best idea to sign it.
Okay. So what figures have you just put down there? I'm saying
I put for you 20 million to do the deal. 25 is what you're sort of pushing
25
for. And I've gone
right.
20 and 15.
Okay. So who else are we going to talk about here? We're obviously Leo. You said 2 left. Who was the other one?
Carl Hein.
Oh, Carl Hein. We haven't spoken about
Mr. Moneymaker, Carl Hein.
Yeah, Carl Hein, the big moneymaker. Yes. Okay, let's go back to Carl Hein quickly. I would take £4 million.
Yep.
£4 million, £5 million for Carl Hein.
Five, because it's going to make my maths easier at the end, please.
£5 million is a fair price for an international goalkeeper who's decent, had a good loan spell, played top level football last season. £5 million.
Yeah. Go on. While I'm noting these down, you tell me what your Trossard deal is, because I don't really know what I think for this one.
Well, he's got 2 years left on his contract. I think if I was Arsenal, I'd be saying, this feels too high. I'm sort of talking myself out. If I was Arsenal, I would be saying £30 million to sign Leo. But I think if you got 25 million for him, I think personally that would be I'd sell for 25. But I think for Arsenal, I think 30 would be a fair starting point for negotiations for me, for someone like Leandro Trossard, given his experience, given he's got 2 years left on his deal. And he's still, performing at the top level. I know some people point to him and say Arsenal can certainly improve there. I probably agree, but I think he's been a great signing, and I think he had a good end to last season. I'd be wanting around 25 million for Leo, although 30 would be what I would hope to get.
Yeah, I actually would have probably gone for those exact same numbers as well. There's something very weird that's happened in the football transfer market in the last 5-6 years. I mean, it's been happening even before then, but this sort of the level to which clubs will now pay for unproven production because a guy's 21 versus if almost any club in the Premier League, if 17 clubs in the Premier League signed Leandro Trossard, he would make their he would make their squad better. And for most of them, he would make their starting 11 significantly better. And I mean, as much as I'd, if I'm Arsenal, I'd really like to get that star left winger in. I know that I'm fine with Leandro Trossard for for now. So I want a good price, and I don't want to just be pushed into selling Trossard, unless the only caveat, I'm sure you would share this, is if I've done a lot of the other business and this just opens up that space in the squad and I can then just go and get the left winger, then I'm a lot more flexible on price, a lot more.
Yeah, if it means say they've done a lot of work behind the scenes and they've got a deal lined up for a Rodrigo, for example, and they know that an extra 20 million will help them get over the line to do that deal, then fine, take the 20 million, go and do it. But if that's not, if you're just selling for the sake of it and you've got nothing really lined up, then what's the point? You've got a good player in Trossard who would be very useful between now and certainly January. But I agree. I think he walks into so many Premier League teams and immediately improves them. I mean, Crystal Palace are going to be looking for a new left-sided player now with Eze on his way to Spurs. You know, Leandro Trossard would go and do a hell of a job for Crystal Palace. He really would. So I don't see how there's not a market for Trossard. You know, he's a hugely talented player. He can play across the front line. Could Arsenal improve on him? Yes, they could, but he's still a very, very good player and very handy squad member. So yeah, I'd be wanting 25 million, but maybe 30. Is there anyone there we haven't spoke about? And they're not going to. I know people keep saying, "I'll sell Gabriel Jesus," but that's just realistically not going to happen. The guy's still 2 months away from full fitness, so it's just not going to happen. I don't think there's anyone else there. You know, a lot of people again will point to Gabriel Martinelli, but that's just not going to happen, is it? No one's coming in now to sign Gabriel Martinelli with 2 weeks left of the window for the sort of price that Arsenal would want for him. So I think we've probably covered all bases there. What are the numbers off the top? Have you been doing it on the fly?
I'm going to do our lowest numbers just to let people give a sense of what we think could be a real like floor for what Arsenal should be looking to get. I'm doing this as we go, 30, 60, 80, 105, about 112 million for me. And as we know, I'm the one that's quite down on fees. If I've got that right, 45, 65, 80, 105. Yeah, 112. You have, and your numbers are a bit more fiddly. 50, 55 plus 32 is 87, plus 12 is 99. 116 million pounds you think Arsenal should be netting for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 players. I don't think that's unreasonable. You're talking
how many are we selling? We're selling 7 players
7.
between now and the end of the window.
And I mean, obviously, the reality is you'd probably say that maybe 5 of them will go.
Yeah.
And you know, not the end of the world if it kind of means you can afford to hold on to Kivy, or let's say sell the rest, and you should still then have the funds to really push on and the space in the wage bill to push on and get a star attacker.
Mm-hmm. So 7 players on average. We're saying about between the two of us, probably 110 million or something. That's the 110 million in sales between now and the end of the window. There you go, Andrea. If you're watching, that's your challenge has been set. We want 110 million pounds through the door between now and then. Right. Oh, I just made you disappear. Sorry for that, mate. There are a couple of questions I want to get to, but quickly on the Leeds game this weekend, starting 11 wise, would you stick with what you saw at Old Trafford, or would you make changes?
Just Madueke for Martinelli.
You would do that.
I would. I think you've got to punish poor performance. I thought it was just a really disappointing game from Gabby, and whatever the sort of outcome of the next 3 or 2 weeks in the transfer window, I think he kind of needs to sort of set the message there that, like, when you're off, this squad is good enough that you can have one off game and then you're out of the 11. So yeah, I would swap Martinelli for Madueke. What about you?
I'd really like to see that. I'd like to see Madueke from the start. I don't think that'll happen. I think he'll keep the same team. But I absolutely get your argument on that. And it would be fun to see Madueke from the start. I think, especially in a game against Leeds when you're going to be playing more against that sort of low block. It will be interesting as well that tactically how Arteta sort of sets this up, because a lot of the business done in the summer, Madueke especially, was to try and sort of counter this low block issue Arsenal have. So are we going to see a sort of tactical shift, sort of opponent by opponent, in terms of how Arteta sets the team up and who plays in what games and things like that? I think we had a few questions about it actually, so I'll rattle through some of them in a minute. But yeah, I think he'll probably. So you're staying with Gyokeres. I think he definitely starts with Gyokeres. I'd be really surprised if he takes Gyokeres out after one game. I don't think he does that. He'll give him another go. And I think at fullback, Calafiori starts again. You know, barring any injury issue, I think he starts again. I think Ben White still plays ahead of Timber. I thought Timber was really good when he came on in that second half. So yeah. Yeah, no, I keep that right hand side together. The Odegaard, Saka, Ben White against that Leeds side. So yeah, I'm sticking with the same 11. I think I would like to see Madueke. I don't think he'll do that, but I'm going the same 11 for the game. Right, I'm going to go through a few questions now before we wrap this up. I want to make sure I get the right ones. Here's one, actually. I think this is the one I was looking for. It's from Max, who says, after watching game week 1, I can tell that Leeds is not going to be the cakewalk we'd hoped for. The way they control basically the entire match against Everton shows their bright spots and energy on the pitch. I think our midfield and attacking lineup will have to step up in a huge way to ensure we get 3 points. Might it make sense to revert something like Havertz and Marino in the starting 11 to have more familiar setup and leave the new signings to come on in the second half for a larger impact if needed?
I think Maxwell's made a really good point there, and yet I would almost flip it on its head and say this is a good time to play Leeds, because they have sort of come through the Championship and then through this game against Everton at Ellen Road, and they have pretty much dominated possession, dominated the game against every team they've played, and they're not going to play that way at the Emirates against Arsenal. If they do, more power to them. I've seen better teams than Leeds try and do that, and they tend to get ripped to shreds. Yeah, I don't think it will. I would go back to what I said. I think you roll out the team you used last week. It's important to get Gyokeres among the goals. I think almost the ideal scenario is Gyokeres scores, so you don't have to worry too much about whether you play him at Anfield from an emotional standpoint. You just pick your best striker because you know that you've not got to worry about Gyokeres getting hurt. You know he's trusted. Yeah, it's a good point, but I do disagree with it.
It was interesting, Mikel, in that press conference after the game, like the first thing when he was asked about Gyokeres, first thing he brought up was it was about his pressing and how there was room for improvement on the pressing. I think it was the first thing he mentioned when he was asked about Gyokeres was there's still work to do there when it comes to pressing. And when he sort of look ahead to that Liverpool game, you do wonder whether Kai Havertz will come into the side for that, whatever happens. Vet Parent now says, hello, gents. Given the bigger squad, we all expect Arteta to rotate better. However, do you expect him to keep certain units together on the left? I think Martinelli's defensive discipline allows Rice to play further forward and accommodates Calafiori's chaos. Similarly, I think Madueke's trade-off between attacking directness and more defensive weakness will require Rice to play deeper. MLS is also more disciplined from a positional point of view. This should give Madueke more license to bomb forward. Which mini units do you see developing? And again, I think this probably goes back to Arteta looking at opponents and how he thinks they're going to play in terms of what he's done in the transfer window, and maybe had certain teams and players in mind for the sort of tactically what Arsenal are going to come up against it each sort of week. So do you sort of look at what Paris said here and see some mini units that Arsenal might go with depending on opposition?
It's really, really good question. I wish I felt like I could answer more of it so far. I'm intrigued to see, like, how does Gyokeres and his sort of natural inclination to drift to the left, how does that fit with both Madueke and Martinelli? And when Madueke plays on the right, do you end up almost developing like a second unit on the right of Ethan / maybe occasionally Havertz, Madueke, and I think fullback would be interchangeable, but let's say Timber? That would be a really interesting one to see, because I think Timber, we know, is a bit less overlappy, but then Nwaneri is maybe more attack-minded than Odegaard even. So that would be a really fun one to see how that kind of rolls out in like a League Cup game early on, and then you sort of have the option to bring it in the Champions League. That's the one I'd be intrigued by. What about you?
I don't see Nwaneri. He's not really a get outside on the right foot type of player when he plays out on the right, if he's playing sort of in that Saka position. But I suppose he's playing more in the Odegaard position this season. Madueke, again, is very much going to be favouring cutting inside on that left foot of his. So would you want White playing with him and create a more of an overlap sort of feeling? I don't know. It's so hard with the inverted wingers, isn't it? And how the fullbacks operate. I thought it was interesting watching Madueke against Manchester United, how as poor as Gabby Martinelli was, and he was poor, his runs were off, his passes were off, but as soon as Madueke came on and he just got skipped past by Ahmad a couple of times really, really comfortably, I was just like, oh my God, there is a lot of work to do. And I know the first thing you want to think of as a left winger is not how good they are defensively, but there was it was quite stark, I thought, how easily he got beaten. And I would not be expecting Martinelli to get beaten as easy as that. And we know how much.
I mean, I'd remember that moment, and I didn't tweet it because I respect my notifications too much, but there was an urge to sort of say, if Martinelli did that, effigies.
Yeah, exactly. So he's going to have to improve on that. We know how much emphasis Mikel Arteta puts on that as well. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point. Will we see mini units develop as the season progresses? I suppose the sample size is so small at the moment, it's impossible to really tell, but it could be, and that's why the squad's been built in the way that it has. I had one while we're sort of talking about Madueke. It was from Matt, who says, you said in your video this morning, it doesn't seem like anything is happening with a left winger regarding transfers. Again, I did caveat that way. I don't know that for certain. We'll wait and see how it pans out. But 2 seasons ago, when we lost to Bayern, it came out Arsenal were looking for a player with an X factor. At the end of last season, a lot of Arsenal content creators were saying a left winger is more important than signing a striker. We still do not have this player. Do you think it would be acceptable by the end of the window if we do not?
Are you now a content creator, not a journalist?
No, maybe I am. Maybe that's how I'm viewed now.
Oh, that's savage from Matt Slater. Let's ban him from any future questions.
I'm viewed as a content creator, not a journalist now. Should I have that on my press card? Well, it's not even a press card anymore. Content creator. I suppose that is how I'm viewed more now. To be honest, I haven't really thought of it until you literally said that. Do I think it's acceptable? Do I think it's acceptable by the end of the window if we do not sign the left-sided winger? I will be disappointed. But ultimately, Arsenal might have signed their left winger.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing here. You know, Madueke has played 3 times for Arsenal, and he's played all 3 times as a left winger. We haven't seen him on the right yet. So have Arsenal signed their left winger? Do I think that would be enough? Personally, no. I wouldn't have gone into this window thinking, oh, if Arsenal sign Madueke, fantastic, that's our left wing sorted. Of course I wouldn't have done. But they may well have internally. That might be how they're viewing it. Do I think it's acceptable? I think it'll be very disappointing if Arsenal don't sign a left winger. I think that was the one area when you looked at the team. Obviously, striker was a big thing this summer, but I think when you looked at the team and where it could really improve and go up another level, I think we all probably agreed that left-sided attacking option was an area where they could do that, and to not sort that out for 2 seasons in a row potentially. I wouldn't shout from the rooftops that it's just unacceptable, but I think it would definitely be a disappointment for me. And it was definitely, I was expecting this summer for Arsenal to go out and sign a proper left winger, not Madueke, who I still view in my mind as Saka backup on the right hand side. I was expecting to sign a proper out and out left sided option.
Yeah, it's hard though. There just aren't a lot of great strikers and great left wingers around in the game that are available. I always think one got away that Arsenal didn't even try for Kvaratskhelia, and I know that they might not have had a chance, but I think you've really got to be in the mix every time one of these players becomes available, because the player we keep talking about as the pure left wing option doesn't play on the left wing. Rodrigo, he's not a left winger. He hardly ever plays there. I know you could play him there. I wouldn't worry about that. But
that's his favoured position, though, isn't it?
But he never plays it.
No, but it's his favoured position.
Yeah, of course. But that does sort of speak to the paucity of the market, that you're getting someone who has been playing out of position for 3 years. It would be maybe your best option, and even then you'd be loaning him. And yeah, a lot of people sort of like to scream about standards and the like, and I think sometimes not spending money. Liverpool are the perfect example of this. Don't spend money just so you can say, well, we had a go at signing the X Factor player if that player's not actually going to transform things. And that would always be the worry, even with someone like Leao. I'm a fan of his, but I'd be scared if I was the one signing the check, the metaphorical check, and committing big money to someone that might not work out.
Why is no one gone for Leao? What is that about? Because on paper, he's such an exciting player. He's got absolutely everything. And I know he's already at a massive club and all that sort of stuff, but why has no one signed Rafa Leao, or really even pushed to sign Rafa Leao?
I mean, his production sort of fell off a cliff, I think, last season. And I believe there are sort of questions over kind of how he responded to his production struggle, falling off a cliff. But I still agree with you. I think someone should have, because he's got all those other raw ingredients that would make me think, well, I can deal with everything else. If he's going to be difficult, I can back myself to manage him, because this is the tall, sprinting forward who can carry the ball, who can shoot. Yes, he might be unreliable, but he's a winger. That's what wingers are. I agree with you. I think it's silly not to take a swing at him, especially if you can get him at 50 million or below. And I reckon you probably could.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's a good place to stop as we hit the hour mark, mate. So it's been a pleasure as always. Thank you everyone for watching and for listening. I'll be back in the morning to do it all over again with my usual regular show. Anything you want me to discuss, get down into the comments, let me know, and I'll pull some of them together and get them included. But for now, for Inside Arsenal Extra Time, that's it for this week. We'll be back next week to do it all over again, hopefully talking about a good win against Leeds, and looking forward to a fairly big game at Anfield in a few days' time. All right. Cheers, James. Have a good one, mate. Enjoy the weekend. I'll speak to you soon.
Bye-bye.